used to believe that family would always stand by you, protect you, have your back no matter what. When I was 16 years old, my sister Abigail stabbed me with a kitchen knife. Blood pooled across the tile floor as I collapsed. My parents rushed in, looked at me bleeding on the ground, and told me it was my fault. That night I ran away and never looked back. 12 years later they found me, but they did not want to apologize. They wanted me to apologize because I made them look bad. Before I continue with this story, let me know where you are watching from. What city, what state, or what country? Drop it in the comments below. If you have ever felt like an outsider in your own family, like you never quite belonged, no matter how hard you tried, hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. This story begins when I was just a child growing up in a house where I was never truly wanted. Let me take you back to where it all started. Our family looked perfect from the outside. 4 people living in a 2-story house in suburban Ohio. White picket fence, neatly trimmed lawn. We went to church every Sunday morning, smiled at the neighbors, attended community barbecues. My father, Gerald, worked as a manager at an insurance company downtown. My mother, Patricia, had a part-time job at the local library. To everyone who passed by our home, we were the picture of middle-class American success. Then there was my sister Abigail, 3 years older than me. And then there was me. I remember thinking as a young child that my life was normal. It was not until I grew older and spent time at friends' houses that I realized what I experienced was far from what other families looked like on the inside. Abigail was everything my parents ever wanted in a child. She had long chestnut hair that my mother would braid every morning before school. Her grades were impeccable. Teachers adored her. She knew exactly what to say to make adults smile, exactly how to present herself to earn praise and admiration. My parents called her their pride and joy, their golden girl, their miracle. Her bedroom was the largest one upstairs, decorated with lavender curtains and matching bedding that my mother picked out specially for her. Every season, Abigail got new clothes. Every summer, she went on trips with my parents to places I only saw in photographs. Her report cards were framed and hung in the living room. Her dance recital trophies lined the mantel above the fireplace. When relatives visited, my parents would parade Abigail around like a show pony. They would list her accomplishments, her awards, her popularity at school. Everyone would nod and smile and tell my parents how lucky they were to have such a wonderful daughter. And where was I during all of this? I was the accident. At least that is what I heard my mother call me once during an argument with my father. They did not know I was listening from the hallway, but I heard every word. I was not planned. I was not wanted. I was simply something that happened. My bedroom was the smallest room in the house, barely big enough for a twin bed and a desk. The furniture was all hand-me-downs from Abigail, scratched and worn by the time they reached me. My clothes were rarely new, mostly things she had outgrown or decided she no longer liked. When I brought home good grades, it was never enough. An A would be met with questions about why it was not an A+. An A+ would be followed by comparisons to Abigail, who had achieved the same thing years earlier but somehow better. Nothing I did could measure up. My birthdays were afterthoughts. One year, my birthday party was combined with a neighborhood block party because my parents did not want to plan 2 separate events. Another year, they forgot entirely until my grandmother called to wish me a happy birthday, and my mother had to pretend she had been planning a surprise all along. There was no surprise. We had leftover cake from a church event and sang a half-hearted song before everyone went back to watching television. At the dinner table, when I tried to share stories about my day at school, I would get maybe 2 sentences out before someone interrupted. Usually my mother would say something like, "Oh, that reminds me, Abigail, tell your father about your history project." And just like that, I would disappear again. I learned to stop trying. I learned to be quiet, to take up as little space as possible, to expect nothing so that I would not be disappointed. I did my homework alone. I walked to school alone. I figured out how to navigate life without asking anyone for help, because asking only led to rejection or indifference. There is one memory that still stings when I think about it. I was 13 years old and had entered a science fair at school. I worked on my project for weeks, staying up late researching building. When the day came, I won 2nd place out of nearly 50 students. It was the proudest moment of my young life. I rushed home, clutching my ribbon, ready to share the news. But when I got home, the house was empty. A note on the kitchen counter said they had taken Abigail to the mall to buy a dress for some upcoming dance. They did not get back until after 9 that night. By then, I had already eaten dinner alone and gone to bed. When I showed them the ribbon the next morning, my father glanced at it and said, "Second place, huh? Well, maybe first next time." And that was it. That was always it. But the hardest part was not my parents. The hardest part was Abigail herself. Around our parents, she was perfect. Sweet, charming, helpful. She would offer to set the table, compliment my mother on her cooking, ask my father about his day at work. She played the role of doting daughter flawlessly. When it was just the two of us, she transformed into someone else entirely. Abigail was cold, calculating. She seemed to genuinely enjoy watching me suffer. She would take my things and hide them, then act confused when I could not find them. When they eventually turned up, she would tell my parents that I was careless and irresponsible. She would whisper cruel things to me when no one was listening. "You are nothing. Nobody wants you here. You are a mistake." When she had friends over, she pretended I did not exist. If someone asked about me, she would say, "Oh, he is just some kid who lives here," not even acknowledging that we were related. I tried telling my parents once. I sat them down and explained how Abigail treated me when they were not around. My mother laughed and said I was being dramatic. My father said I was jealous of my sister and needed to grow up. They told me to stop making up stories for attention. After that, I stopped telling them anything. I learned to stay out of Abigail's way as much as possible. I learned to survive in a house where I was invisible at best and a target at worst. The day that changed everything happened when I was 16 years old. Abigail was 19, home from college for the weekend. She was attending a state university about 2 hours away, but she came back frequently, usually when she needed money or wanted my parents to do her laundry. That Saturday afternoon, I was in my room working on an assignment due Monday. I had a laptop that my father had given me the year before, an older model that he no longer needed for work. It was slow and the battery barely held a charge, but it was mine. The only thing in that house that was truly mine. Abigail walked into my room without knocking. She never knocked. "I need that laptop," she said, pointing at it. "I have a presentation due and my computer crashed." I looked up at her. "I am using it right now. I have homework due tomorrow." She rolled her eyes. "Your homework can wait. My presentation is worth 30% of my grade." I felt something shift inside me. Maybe it was 16 years of being pushed aside. Maybe it was the accumulation of every stolen moment, every ignored achievement, every cruel whisper in the dark. Whatever it was, I did not back down. "No," I said. "I need it. You can use the computer in the living room." Her eyes narrowed. "Excuse me." Before I could respond, she stormed out of my room. I heard her footsteps on the stairs, heard her voice raised in complaint. Within minutes, both my parents appeared in my doorway. My mother crossed her arms. "Give your sister the laptop." "But I am working on something important." My father stepped forward, his face red. "We did not raise you to be selfish. Abigail needs it more than you do. Give it to her, now." I stood up from my desk. For the first time in my life, I refused. Why does she always get everything? Why do I always have to give up what is mine? I need this too. Does that not matter at all? The slap came fast and hard across my face. My father had never hit me before, but in that moment, with Abigail watching from the hallway with a satisfied smirk on her face, he struck me without hesitation. "You are an ungrateful brat," he said, "after everything we have done for you." My cheek burned, my eyes watered, but I did not cry. I refused to give them the satisfaction. I pushed past them and walked downstairs to the kitchen. I needed water. I needed to breathe. I needed to get away from all three of them, even if just for a moment. The kitchen was dim, lit only by the fading afternoon light coming through the window above the sink. I grabbed a glass and filled it with water, trying to calm my racing heart. I did not hear Abigail come in behind me. "See what happens when you try to fight back." I turned around. She was leaning against the doorframe, arms crossed, that same smirk on her face. "Leave me alone," I said quietly. She walked closer. "You think you matter. You think anyone in this house cares what you want or need. You are nothing. You have always been nothing. And you will always be nothing." Something snapped inside me. The words came out before I could stop them. "One day," I said, "everyone is going to see who you really are. This perfect act you put on is not going to last forever." The change in her face was immediate. The smirk vanished, replaced by something dark and cold. Her eyes went flat like a switch had been flipped. She reached over to the counter where my mother kept a wooden block of kitchen knives. She pulled out the smallest one, a paring knife with a 3-inch blade. I thought she was just trying to scare me. I genuinely did not believe she would actually do anything. I was wrong. She moved fast. The blade went into my stomach before I could even raise my hands to defend myself. The pain was not immediate. First there was just shock, a strange coldness, and then heat spreading outward from where the knife had entered. I looked down and saw blood soaking through my shirt. So much blood. My legs gave out and I collapsed onto the kitchen floor. I screamed, or at least I tried to. The sound that came out was more of a gasp, a desperate cry for help. Abigail stood over me for a moment watching. Then she did something I will never forget. She reached up and scratched her own face, dragging her nails across her cheek hard enough to draw blood. She pulled at her shirt, tearing it at the collar. And then she started screaming. By the time my parents rushed into the kitchen, she was sobbing hysterically in the corner. Blood ran down her face from the self-inflicted scratches. She pointed at me with a trembling hand. "He attacked me," she wailed. "He tried to hurt me. I had to defend myself." My mother ran to Abigail first. Not to me, bleeding on the floor. To Abigail. My father looked at me with disgust. "What did you do to her?" I tried to speak, tried to tell them what really happened, but the pain was overwhelming. The room was starting to spin. "She stabbed me," I managed to say. "She stabbed me." My mother whirled around Abigail, cradled in her arms. "Look at her face. Look what you did to my daughter." It was a neighbor who called 911. They had heard the screaming through the open windows. The ambulance arrived within 10 minutes, followed by the police. At the hospital, the doctors told me I was lucky. The knife had missed my vital organs by less than an inch. The wound was about 2 inches deep, 15 stitches to close it up. I would have a scar for the rest of my life. The police questioned everyone. My parents told them it was a domestic dispute that got out of hand. They said Abigail acted in self-defense after I attacked her first. They pointed to the scratches on her face as evidence of my aggression. Abigail, of course, corroborated every word. No charges were filed. The case was closed as a family matter. The official report called it an accidental injury during a sibling altercation. I spent 3 days in that hospital. Not once did my parents come to visit. Not once did they call to check on me. The only people who showed me any kindness were the nurses who changed my bandages and the social worker who asked if I felt safe going home. I lied and said yes. I did not know what else to say. When I finally returned to the house, Abigail was waiting. She caught me alone in the hallway outside my room. Next time, she whispered, "I will not miss." That night, I made my decision. I could not stay. Staying meant more of the same or worse. Staying might mean not surviving the next time Abigail decided to remind me of my place. I waited until everyone was asleep. I packed a small backpack with clothes, my identification documents, and the $300 I had saved from mowing lawns the previous summer. I took one photograph, the only picture I had of my grandmother who had passed away when I was 10. She was the only person in my family who had ever made me feel loved. I climbed out my window, dropped down to the lawn below, and walked to the bus station 3 miles away. I bought a ticket to Columbus, the biggest city within reach. I did not leave a note. I did not say goodbye. I just left. Those first weeks in Columbus were the hardest of my life. The $300 did not last long. I slept in bus shelters in the doorways of closed businesses behind dumpsters and alleyways. I ate whatever I could find, sometimes digging through trash cans behind restaurants for scraps. I was 16 years old, alone and terrified. But I was also free. For the first time in my entire life, no one was telling me I was worthless. No one was hitting me or threatening me. No one was making me feel like I did not deserve to exist. The freedom was worth the hunger. After about 3 weeks of living on the streets, I wandered into a small church looking for a place to warm up. The pastor there, an older man named Reverend Harold, noticed me sitting in the back pew. Instead of asking me to leave, he sat down beside me and asked if I was okay. I do not know why, but I told him everything. The whole story from the beginning. He listened without interrupting, without judging. When I finished, he put a hand on my shoulder and said, "You did not deserve any of that, and you do not have to go through this alone." Reverend Harold connected me with a shelter for homeless youth. For the first time in weeks, I had a bed to sleep in and regular meals. The shelter helped me enroll in a program to get my GED since I could not go back to my old high school. I studied during the day and worked part-time at a grocery store in the evenings, stocking shelves and bagging groceries. It was hard work. There were nights when I cried myself to sleep, missing the idea of family even though my actual family had been nothing but cruel. There were moments when I wondered if I had made a mistake, if I should go back and try to make things work. But every time I lifted my shirt and saw the scar on my stomach, I remembered why I left. I remembered Abigail's cold eyes. I remembered my father's slap. I remembered my mother running to comfort my attacker while I bled on the floor. There was nothing to go back to. By the time I turned 18, I had saved enough money to rent a small room in a shared apartment. I enrolled in community college, taking night classes in accounting while working full-time during the day. It was exhausting. Some semesters I barely slept more than 4 or 5 hours a night. But I kept going. I made friends along the way. Real friends, not people who pretended to care while secretly hoping I would fail. There was Marcus, a coworker at the grocery store, who became my closest confidant. He was a few years older than me, working his way through school just like I was. He never asked too many questions about my past, but he was always there when I needed someone to talk to. There was Professor Thompson at the community college, an accounting instructor who saw potential in me. She helped me apply for scholarships and wrote recommendation letters for transfer programs. Thanks to her, I was able to complete my bachelor's degree at a state university without going into crippling debt. I graduated at 23 years old. No one from my biological family was there, but Marcus came. Professor Thompson came. Reverend Harold came even though his health was failing by then. They cheered when my name was called. That was my real family. The people who showed up. After graduation, I got a job at a small accounting firm. I worked hard, earned promotions, built a life for myself. By the time I was 27, I had my own apartment, a reliable car, and money in the bank. I started seeing a therapist to work through the trauma of my childhood, something I had been putting off for years because I thought asking for help was a sign of weakness. It was not. It was the strongest thing I ever did. My therapist helped me understand that what happened to me was not my fault. The way my parents treated me, the way Abigail abused me, none of it was because of anything I did wrong. They were broken people who took their brokenness out on the most vulnerable person in the house. That person happened to be me. For 12 years I had no contact with anyone from my family. I did not know if they looked for me. I did not know if they cared that I was gone. Part of me assumed they were relieved, one less inconvenience to deal with. Then one day I received an email. The subject line was simple, "From your mother." I stared at it for a long time before I opened it. My hands were shaking. The message was short. It said that they had finally tracked me down through social media and professional networking sites. It said that Abigail was getting married to someone from a wealthy family. It said that the wedding was in 2 months and that my presence was required. Required. Not requested. Required. The email did not ask how I was doing. It did not apologize for anything. It did not acknowledge the 12 years of silence. It simply stated that I needed to come home because family was important and people were starting to ask questions about where I was. I learned later that my parents had been lying to everyone for over a decade. They told relatives that I was studying abroad, that I was too busy with my career to visit, that I sent my love and well wishes from afar. They created an entire fictional version of my life to avoid explaining why their son had disappeared. Now, with the wedding approaching and extended family planning to attend, the lies were catching up to them. Someone had found my LinkedIn profile and started asking why I was listed as living in Ohio, not overseas. The questions were becoming harder to deflect. I agreed to meet them. Not because I wanted reconciliation, not because I missed them, but because I needed to face them one last time. I needed to close this chapter properly. We met at a coffee shop in a neutral location. I requested that Abigail not be present, and surprisingly, my parents agreed. They looked older when they walked in. My father had more gray hair than I remembered. My mother seemed smaller, somehow less imposing than the woman who had haunted my memories for so long. For a brief moment, I almost felt sorry for them. That feeling disappeared as soon as my mother opened her mouth. "We need you to come to the wedding," she said, not even bothering with a greeting. "And we need you to apologize to the family for disappearing." I blinked at her. "Apologize," my father nodded. "You embarrassed us." You made us look like bad parents. Do you have any idea what it has been like making excuses for you all these years? I could not believe what I was hearing. After everything they had done, after everything they had allowed to happen, they were sitting here demanding an apology from me. What about what Abigail did to me? I asked. What about the fact that she stabbed me and you blamed me for it? My mother waved her hand dismissively. That was years ago. Abigail has grown up. She is getting married now. You need to let go of the past. Let go of the past. As if the scar on my stomach did not remind me of it every single day. My father leaned forward. Here is what is going to happen. You are going to come to the wedding. You are going to stand with the family and smile. And at the reception you are going to give a speech apologizing for being absent all these years. You will tell everyone that you are going through personal issues and that you are grateful your family never gave up on you. He said it like it was already decided. Like my compliance was assumed. I looked at both of them for a long moment. These two people who had brought me into the world and then spent 16 years making me feel worthless. These two people who had chosen my abuser over me. These two people who even now only cared about how things looked to others. I stood up from the table. No, I said. My voice was calm but firm. My mother's face reddened. Excuse me, I said. No. I am not going to apologize for leaving a house where I was abused and neglected. I am not going to pretend that everything is fine for the sake of your image. And I am certainly not going to stand up at Abigail's wedding and tell lies to make you look like good parents. My father slammed his hand on the table. After everything we did for you, this is how you repay us. Everything you did for me, I almost laughed. You gave me scraps and expected gratitude. You blamed me when your daughter put a knife in my stomach. You never once in 16 years made me feel like I mattered. My mother started to speak, but I held up my hand. I am done, I said. I have built a life without you. A good life. I have people who actually care about me now. If your relatives ask where I am, you can tell them the truth for once. Or you can keep lying. I really do not care. But you will not use me as a prop to maintain your perfect family illusion. I reached into my wallet and placed a $10 bill on the table to cover my coffee. Then I walked out of that shop and did not look back. My hands were trembling. My heart was pounding. But for the first time in my life, I had stood up to them. I had said the things I had been holding inside for 12 years. It felt like freedom. The weeks after that meeting were not easy. Old wounds reopened. Nightmares returned, vivid dreams of Abigail standing over me with that knife, of my parents turning their backs while I bled on the floor. I increased my therapy sessions from once a week to twice a week. Healing is not linear. I learned that the hard way. There are good days and bad days, steps forward and steps back. But with each passing week, the bad days became less frequent. The nightmares faded. The weight on my chest grew lighter. I wrote a letter to my parents. I poured everything into it, every hurt, every disappointment, every moment where they had failed me. I did not hold back. For pages and pages I wrote about what it felt like to be the unwanted child, the invisible son, the boy who was blamed for his own stabbing. I never sent it. Instead, I took that letter to a fire pit in a friend's backyard and burned it. I watched the pages curl and blacken, watched my words turn to ash and float away into the night sky. It was a small ritual, but it meant everything. I was releasing them. Not forgiving, not forgetting, but releasing. Letting go of the hope that they would ever change, ever apologize, ever see me as worthy of love. That hope had been a chain around my neck for too long. Today I am 28 years old. I have a stable career at a larger accounting firm. I got promoted twice in the last 3 years. I have an apartment that feels like home, decorated with things I chose, filled with memories I have made. I have friends who feel more like family than my actual relatives ever did. Marcus is still my best friend. We grab dinner together every week without fail. I started dating again after years of being too afraid to let anyone close. There is a woman I have been seeing for the past few months, someone kind and patient, who does not push me to share more than I am ready to share. I do not know where it will lead, but for the first time I am open to the possibility. Every year on the anniversary of the day I left, I do something special for myself. Sometimes it is a nice dinner. Sometimes it is a small trip somewhere I have always wanted to go. It is my way of celebrating the moment I chose survival over suffering, The moment I chose myself. I never heard from my parents again after that coffee shop meeting. I do not know if Abigail got married. I do not know if the wedding went smoothly or if my absence caused problems. Honestly, I do not want to know. That chapter of my life is closed. What I have learned from all of this is something I wish I had known as a child. Family is not defined by blood. Family is the people who show up for you, who support you, who love you without conditions. Family is built, not inherited. I also learned that leaving a toxic situation is not cowardly. It is brave. Choosing to save yourself when no one else will is an act of courage, not weakness. If you are in a place where you are being hurt, whether physically or emotionally, you have every right to walk away. You do not owe anyone your suffering. And finally, I learned that you do not have to forgive to find peace. I have not forgiven my parents. I have not forgiven Abigail. Maybe I never will. But I have stopped carrying them with me. I have stopped letting their voices live in my head, telling me I am worthless, telling me I am nothing. Their opinions do not define me. Their treatment of me does not determine my value. I know who I am now. I know what I am worth. And I know that I deserve the life I have built for myself. If you are watching this and any part of my story resonates with you, I want you to know that you are not alone. Whatever you are going through, whatever family situation you are trapped in, there is a way out. It might be hard. It might take years. But it is possible. You deserve better. So here is my question for you. Have you ever had to walk away from people who were supposed to love you in order to protect yourself? What gave you the strength to do it? Share your story in the comments. You never know who might need to hear it. If this story touched you in any way, please hit that like button. Subscribe to this channel if you want to hear more stories like this one. And share this video with someone who might need to hear these words today. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. And wherever you are in your journey, I hope you find your peace. I hope you find your people. And I hope you never forget that you are worthy of love exactly as you are. Take care of yourselves.